They grabbed her in the middle of the drill yard, boots crunching on the gravel as two MPs closed in like wolves, rifles tight to their chests. Hands quick and rough when they seized her arms. Cadet Eleanor Mendez didn't resist, didn't speak, just stared straight ahead while the sun beat down on her, and a crowd of young recruits froze mid-formation. Whispers buzzing like hornets. "She's a fake," one hissed. "Never served, not a real SEAL," said another. And somewhere near the command tower a voice called for silence. But the damage was done, the accusations spreading faster than fire in dry brush. And even the officers at the gate turned their heads, unsure what they were witnessing, because Eleanor had worn the uniform like it belonged to her, moved like she earned every thread, every stripe, every ounce of sweat on that collar. But now they dragged her across the yard like a criminal, toward the CO's office where rumors went to burn or explode. And as the door slammed behind her, she stood before Captain Brigham, an aging officer with silver at his temples, and something unreadable in his eyes, who read the file in front of him like it was poison. "No service record," he said flatly. "No training record from Buddy S. No SEAL pipeline entries. And yet you walk into this base with a trident patch and call yourself one of us." And still, she didn't speak, only unbuttoned the cuff of her left sleeve slowly, calmly, revealing skin inked not with decoration, but something older, something precise, technical, something unmistakably military. And Brigham leaned forward, squinting, his breath catching for half a second before he whispered, "That's not possible." But it was. And she said her first words then, "It's real, sir. I was born into it," which made no sense at all. Not until the base alert triggered and the general's convoy rolled in early. Black SUVs parting the crowd like sharks through minnows. And out stepped General Wallace, a man so feared and revered most officers straightened their spines at the sound of his boots, who didn't speak to anyone, didn't ask questions, just walked straight past Brigham's office, opened the door, and froze when he saw her, his face collapsing not into confusion but memory, and he whispered, "It's you," as if he'd seen a ghost, then barked, "Everyone out," and once the room emptied, he looked at her like a father who hadn't dared hope. Voice raw, "How the hell are you standing here?" And Eleanor told him the story no one else believed, how she was the daughter of Chief Petty Officer Miguel Mendez, SEAL Team 4, listed me as 16 years ago, after a black ops mission in Burma went off the grid. How the government buried the op. The families got silence, and she got exile. Raised off the books by a retired medic who owed Miguel his life. Trained since age 10 in isolation. Taught to shoot, to survive, to think like a ghost. Until one day she found the last thing her father left behind. A carved coin with the Reaper's seal crest and a single name etched inside the general's. And she followed it here, enlisted under a forged identity, because it was the only way through the door. But now the door had become a trap, and Wallace's eyes burning turned away and made one call. Voice shaking for the first time in years. "Get me Keating, now, and across the world." Admiral John Keating, commander of Special Warfare Command, answered with a long breath. Listened silently, then said only, "Send her to me." And the next morning, The base stood still as a chopper descended and Eleanor stepped aboard with chains still on her wrists. Not as a prisoner, but a question the entire chain of command couldn't answer. Not yet. Not until she stepped off at Fort Granite and walked straight into a room full of men. Who thought they'd seen it all? Silver-haired legends, scar-faced ghosts. The ones who didn't talk about what they'd done but when they saw the mark on her arm. Several stood, one saluted, and another just whispered, "No way," and the old man in the center, Callahan, the last of SEAL Team Phantom, pushed to his feet and asked only one thing. "What do you remember about the Reaper coin?" And she told him the words her father made her repeat every night before sleep. No grave, no flag, no name but never forgotten. And silence swept the room like a wave, because those were the classified words, buried in the Phantom Oath, known only to the 11 original ghosts who vanished into myth. And now this girl, this accused fake, had spoken them with the cadence of childhood. And Callahan sat down hard, said, "My God." Miguel had a daughter, and suddenly she wasn't a fake. Wasn't a fraud, she was legacy incarnate. The living consequence of men who vanished so their families could live, but whose daughter refused to stay buried. And as word spread through command, the Pentagon grew nervous, because if her story was true, it meant entire files were lies, medals given for false reasons, and men who died as scapegoats now had a witness. A weapon. Eleanor, who knew names, who remembered faces, who carried the code not on paper but in muscle memory and scars. And by the time the defense secretary ordered a private review, she was already training again. Recertified in half the time it took others, outperforming entire units, breaking records held by the very men who once trained her father. And then came the Somalia, hostage extraction, intel failure, Delta out. One shot left and Wallace sent her, unannounced, under the radar, no team patch, just a name on a manifest that made one man laugh and another go pale. But when the mission went south, and their comms blacked out, and the warlord's men circled in, her voice came through the static like steel. Objective secured, perimeter clear, and a camera drone caught a figure dragging for wounded SEALs out of fire while laying cover. With her offhand, bullet in her thigh, teeth clenched around a tourniquet, eyes locked forward like her father taught her, and when she landed back at base, bloodied but upright, the men who once whispered fake now stood aside, unsure whether to salute or step back. And one by one they chose the former, until even Wallace stepped forward and said, "You've earned what was always yours," and pinned the official SEAL trident to her chest while the entire compound watched in silence. And when reporters tried to swarm, tried to dig into her past, they found whole years scrubbed, names missing, birth certificates that didn't match, and a single unmarked grave near the Texas border that read only for the quiet ones who guard the gates. But Eleanor didn't care for headlines. She visited that grave once, whispered, "I did it, Papa," and left behind her coin, Reaper crest up, before walking back into a world that now knew her not as a fraud, but as a force, as the woman who carried the burden of forgotten men and made it her mission to make them unforgettable. And in every hallway she passed after that, no one asked her to prove anything, not after they saw the mark. Not after they heard the story, and certainly not after they realized that sometimes the ones we silence the fastest are the ones who speak the most without ever raising their voice.